Hi, ma'am. Good morning. So, this is my presentation for our subject's task for the topic 1, episode 1, with the title The Teacher as a Person Philosophy and Mission Statement. For the learning outcomes of this task, at the end of this episode, the student should be able to clarify their values about teaching and in articulating and demonstrating one's personal philosophy of teaching and craft their own mission statement as future teachers. Now, for us to be an effective teacher in the future, it is important to first start with an awareness of our values about teaching. And we're glad to be given the chance to ask for insights from some professional teachers for us to have better understanding of the teaching profession and of course to be able to write our own mission statement that we will uphold with conviction. So my partner, Jornal Canieta, and I were able to interview three teachers from Minolos Integrated School for the why, the how, and the what of teaching. For the first teacher, we had Mrs. Corazon S. Gabales, a teacher of Minolos Integrated School handling English and Filipino for grades 9 and 10. For the first question, which is why one should teach, she answered, I teach not because it is my job or it's my source of living. I teach because I believe it is my faith. Teaching is not my first course, but I think God put me in this because of a mission. And that mission is to mold my students and touch their lives. My main goal for them is to learn not just the lessons, but to learn how to deal with day to day life. For the second question, the what one should teach, she answered, I want to teach my students not just what's in the book, but more of the values out from the lessons that I am teaching them. Especially that I am teaching Filipino and English, I want them to learn and inculcate the values of every story that we tackle inside the classroom. For the third question, how one should teach, she said, as we all know, because of the pandemic, we are facing a gradual shift in the modality of teaching, from face to face to modular and to online learning. It's a sad fact that we are left with limited means on how to teach them. In deeper sense, I think we should teach them by making them understand how constant change is, so whatever happens, they will be ready. So those are her answers for the three questions. Now let's proceed to the second teacher we had. She's Mrs. Aristea Aldava, a teacher of the same school. She handles science and AP for grades 8 and 9. For the why question, she answered, according to many, teaching is the noblest profession. For me, I teach because I want my students to acquire knowledge from me, even though they can acquire through the internet on their own. I believe the reason I teach is because I want to share my whole thing to them, and I want them to become somebody someday. I want them to become transformative individuals, and that's my goal for them. For the what question, what one should teach, she said, in my experience, I choose to teach what is essential, which is very applicable to the reality of life. Content, it is easy to understand, but I believe if they learned, they can apply it to their day to day living, and that's because knowledge is the beginning of understanding. Now, for the third question, how one should teach, she answered, in my 3 years of experience with grade 10 students, I learned that I should follow what I learned back in college. Say, for example, the way of teaching, the approaches or the pedagogies taught to us. Then later on, I realized that you have to practice what you teach because what's important is the connection with your students. Now, proceeding to the third teacher, Miss Maria Ever Aguilar, same means of interview through a video conference call. She handles TLE, AP, and MAPE for grades 8 and 9. Now, for the why one should teach, she answered, aside from giving what I know to my students, which is elaborating on the lessons, I teach because I want to help students better understand themselves and others. I teach because I know that learning can change a student's life. teaching fulfills my purpose. As to my goals for my students, one evident fact that I can share is to give them the assurance for quality learning and leaving them an indelible mark on whatever path they would choose someday. For the what one should teach, she said, given the fact that teachers elaborate the lessons, I think the best part of a teacher is to inspire students to love learning. Learning and teaching are two challenging processes, but that doesn't hinder to have fun experience in the classroom. I want to teach them to stay focused, but keeping in mind also that learning is creative and fun. Likewise, that teaching is a very enjoyable and rewarding career. For the how questions, she said, since we are facing the worldwide crisis COVID 19, the type of learning we are in is modular and online. Yet, as a teacher, that doesn't stop me from teaching with enthusiasm and passion. I always see to it that I have this positive attitude, though human as we are, there are those moments that I somehow cross the line, but I always keep in mind that different students learn in different ways, and that one is distinct from the others. Now, after hearing all those questions, the next task asks us to analyze the answers of the three teachers and to fill the matrix below. For teacher one, this is for the why, what, and how of teaching. So I managed to just compile all of them in one setting instead of putting the table in my output. So for the values reflected first for the why question, uh, I would say that the values taught by Mrs. Gabales is that teaching is not just a matter of passion, but can also be a matter of dedication, devotion, and faith. Now, for the what question, values reflected is more than the knowledge, values need to be discovered in every lesson and should be lived up to. And for the how question, the values is education is not just for earning a degree, but it also serves as a preparation of what life has to bring. For the philosophy that I can think of that's applicable to Mrs. Gabales is, in general, I would say that she reflects the mixed philosophies of essentialism and constructivism. The reason is that she focuses on human concerns and at the same time taking into account the general welfare of her students, especially now that we're in the middle of a pandemic. She also ensures her students are well facilitated despite the current modality of education. Now, for the reflection, like the overall reflection with our interview with her, as an aspiring teacher, I personally think that Mrs. Gabales is at her best foot towards her profession. Her beliefs about teaching and her ways of inculcating knowledge are just and right, especially in this time of hardship. With devotion and faith, there's nothing really that I can disagree. I also realized that indeed it is important to be faithful in ourselves, in our students, and in the profession itself in order to become a more productive and efficient preacher of knowledge. Now, proceeding to teacher number two, Mrs. Aristea Aldava, this is what I have reflected from her answers. As for the values for the why question, I would say that teachers are not just people doing their job, but they also are the best source of knowledge. For the what question, I would say that teachers should teach not just what's in the books, but they should teach what are essential to life and living. For the how question, teachers must foster not just a conducive environment, but a healthy relationship through personal or human connection. For the philosophy reflected, understanding Mrs. Aldava from a wider perspective, I would say that she's a mix of being a progressivist and a social reconstructionist. It's mainly because her focus is on life's reality, the demands of life that she wants her students to be capable of dealing with. She also wants to make sure that she becomes a part of her students' success by imparting human connection. For the overall reflection, the same thing, I have nothing against her reasons and ways of teaching, as All of those make sense and address differentiated needs of the students and the situation. Her goal for her students is what I love the most, which is to be transformative individuals. Because in this generation where everything transforms with all the technology, I also believe that everyone must be abreast with all these advancements and changes. And teachers like her who aspire to prepare her students for such is ideal for this ever changing world. Now, going to teacher three, Miss Maria Ever Aguilar, the values are reflected from her answers is that for the why, we should teach not just for the students to understand the lesson, but for them to have a better understanding of themselves. For the what question, take learning seriously in a fun and creative way. And for the how question, I would say the value is, or the values that can be reflected is that enthusiasm and passion towards teaching make the profession enjoyable and rewarding. For the philosophy reflected for Miss Aguilar, I would say that her philosophy in teaching are a combination of constructivism and humanism. With her student centered philosophy, she would always think of ways on how to keep students' interest in learning based on the idea that students should be given with choices and should be engaged along the process. She also wants her students to explore different areas of learning and make them feel that she is enthusiastic and passionate just as much as how she wants her students to be focused and be interested to learn. As for my reflection with her answers, in a broader perspective, each of us has our own ways on dealing with life. Miss Aguilar's positivity and passion towards teaching is fundamental in creating a more meaningful teaching learning experience. There's nothing that I can disagree with because in times like this pandemic, where everyone is stressed, such attitude can make a difference to a student's outlook about continuing education despite the challenges. Now, those basically are for the interview we did with the three teachers. For the task number two, based on the interview conducted with the three teachers, reflect on the following guide questions. Now, which views do you agree with or disagree with, and then expound? Well, as all of my reflection speaks, there's nothing that I can disagree about all of their reasons and ways of teaching. Generally, all their insights about this profession are based on their first-hand experiences and are what they think are best for the general welfare and betterment of their students. Of course, given that they are the ones who know best on what's going on in the school setting and how they should deal or handle, you know, their profession. Now, all of them spoke with their most sincere intentions and reasons. In addition, I felt that all of them are doing their best to serve their purpose, not just as teachers, but molders of students' life, which I myself aspire to do in the near future. Now, uh, this part of the task asks me to do my part of completing those sentences for the why, what, and how of the teaching profession. So, in God's perfect timing, when I become a teacher, my main goal for my students would be for them to learn how to become what they least expect to be. So everyone dreams to become someone, but the harsh reality of life may cause reasons for them not to achieve their dreams. So I want to teach my students how to be ready for the worst things in life. I want to open their minds to the possibility that life is unfair and that we can't always have what we want. That way, they will be prepared and be open to having more contingency plans for the betterment of their lives and still be happy, even if it is from a different angle of life they wish to have. Because this is a sad reality. There are so many graduates uh, who got jobs that are very far from their education or from their degree. There are those education graduates who are working in malls as cashiers or as baggers and other jobs that are just not related to the course they graduated from. So I want my students to learn how to accept the fact that they can't always have what they want, or In case they can't become what they wish to become, they just need to, pursue life and enjoy and still be happy with whatever life would give them. For the what question, what I really want to teach my students is the reality of life and the skills they need to have in order to survive. Specifically, I would say that communication skills is what I would really want to teach them, because no matter what industry or career path they would wish to pursue in the future, being able to communicate and express themselves can surely bring them to places and eventually success. Now, for the last question, the how question, I will teach my students by being a facilitator more than a dictator. By being a facilitator means letting them explore themselves and experience what life really has to offer. I will also make sure I inspire them to yearn to be the best version of themselves, and of course leave a legacy of being a friend more than just a teacher by having personal human connection. Because I personally think that when you have this good relationship with your students, then your students will feel at ease, they will be comfortable uh, listening or getting learnings from you. That way they will also not be intimidated, and they will feel excited going to school in continuing their studies. Now, for the last question, what philosophy do you adhere to and why? Well, I'm a personal believer of experience is the best teacher, and that learning by doing is the most effective way for holistic development. With that said, I would say that I am a constructivist. With my life experience, I'd say that this philosophy is the most effective in terms of molding individuals to meet the demands of this century or this generation. I also think that just knowing the theory is not learning, but just understanding the basics. When theories are put into practice and are experienced firsthand, for me, only then is when learning becomes complete. Now, for the last assessment of this task, a mission statement is a clear and concise expression of your beliefs, values, and philosophy. And we are asked to write our own statement here when we become a teacher, or, as a future teacher. So, for my mission statement as a future teacher, uh, that is ever. And ever means education is not just a profession, but a vocation which intends to provide an everlasting experience in order to reap the sweetest rewards of life. And that concludes my presentation for this task. Thank you so much, ma'am, for listening, and have a good day. Bye bye.